Trevor Engleson's Meghan's first husband previously had this operation, which would mean, of course, that she was unable to give birth to a child herself.
She will find a way to bounce past him to some other taker who might actually just love the guy. She will take her royal kids, who can still go by prince and princess, and find the billionaire.
The only person who can really clear this up outside of Meghan herself is Trevor Engelson, who until this point has kept a total dignified silence, despite the fact that Meghan treated him so appallingly, even sending back their engagement ring via the post. That information came direct from Meghan's ex-husband, Trevor Engelson, via an intermediary. And obviously Trevor Engelson is a very successful TV producer. He now has his own family. He's very happy. He hasn't spoken on the record.
He's moved on. He has put Meghan behind him. He probably is not interested in people bringing up his past relationship. He has 3 children now with his new wife.
He must have been so devastated at the time with the way that he was treated, but actually he dodged a bullet. He has his dignity. He's still working in the industry. I mean, we obviously know via Tom Bower that Meghan Markle returned her engagement ring to Trevor Engelson via the post. But the fact that you're actually so blatant in terms of the fact that you want this famous royal, and specifically you want Prince Harry, because you know my reporting on Meghan Markle's early life in London, Angela, made it very clear that she was looking for a celebrity.
That Meghan Markle really did expect Harry to be a billionaire when she met him. She was incredibly disappointed to find out he's only worth a couple million, and she's gonna have to actually work and hawk these jams and jellies and dog biscuits to have the lifestyle that she wants.
This week's biggest headline isn't about Meghan Markle's current projects. It's about her past and the ex-husband who claims she planned her royal life long before it began. Trevor Engelson, who married Meghan in 2011 and divorced her 2 years later, has once again become the focal point of online debate. According to those close to him, Trevor revealed years ago that Meghan always had her sights on royalty, with some insisting she even used Prince Harry's photo as part of a vision board. For critics, this latest resurfacing feels like confirmation of what they've long suspected, that Meghan's story was less about destiny and more about design. They point to her 2011 Jamaica wedding, remembered less for the vows and more for Meghan's role as the host who curated the entire atmosphere. They point to her Toronto years, where she lived 2 lives simultaneously, daytime actress, nighttime connector, and allegedly orchestrated private nights with Harry so carefully that even palace aides couldn't trace them. And they point to the silence that followed, a silence that many argue was too perfect to be accidental. The pattern is striking. Build, erase, rebuild. Friends disappeared. Family ties were cut back. Official palace biographies quietly dropped details that once painted her as a prodigy. And in their place, Meghan presented a streamlined version of herself, tailored, polished, and ready for the next chapter. To supporters, this shows resilience. To critics, it's proof she was playing the long game from the start. Now, as Meghan and Harry face renewed criticism over brand deals and contradictions in their public narrative, Trevor's name is reappearing in headlines. And whether you believe him or not, his perspective adds weight to the question that won't go away. Was Meghan Markle swept into history by chance, or did she plan every step from day one? Trevor Engelson wasn't just Meghan Markle's first husband. He was the man who saw the early blueprint of who she would later become. A Hollywood producer with steady credentials, he met Meghan before she broke through, before Suits made her a recognizable face, before her name was ever linked to royalty. They married in 2011 in Jamaica, but by 2013, the marriage was over. On paper, it was just another Hollywood split. In reality, it left behind a trail of stories that now look impossible to ignore. Insiders close to Trevor have long suggested he understood Meghan's ability to shift identities better than anyone else. To him, she wasn't just an actress struggling to climb the industry ladder. She was someone who could adapt, compartmentalize, and erase versions of herself when they no longer served her. That skill may have been unremarkable in Hollywood, but when viewed against her later life, it takes on a much bigger meaning. The most explosive claim linked to Trevor is that Meghan had been thinking strategically about her future long before Harry ever entered the picture. According to those who've repeated his words, she didn't just dream of success, she targeted it. Some even point to the story of a vision board with Prince Harry's face on it, whether literal or symbolic, as a sign that her royal chapter was never an accident. And here's what makes Trevor central to the conversation. Meghan has almost completely erased him from her public narrative. He isn't discussed in interviews. His name is minimized in biographies. Yet he remains the one person who knew her before the reinventions, before the edits, before the palace machinery. For critics, that silence says everything. It's not just that Meghan left Trevor behind. It's that his existence complicates the narrative she's built ever since. In 2011, Meghan and Trevor's Jamaica wedding should have been remembered as a tropical escape, a simple love story under the sun. But what guests still recall most isn't the vows or the setting, it's Meghan herself, sitting down and rolling joints for nearly 100 people. At the time, friends laughed it off, calling it quirky and fun. But with hindsight, critics see something else. The very first glimpse of Meghan as the curator, the one who didn't just join the atmosphere but created it. It wasn't about indulgence, it was about control. Meghan was setting the tone, making sure the energy of the event reflected her influence. That detail, once treated as a playful anecdote, now looks like part of a larger pattern. Because when you compare it with her later years in Toronto, the similarities are striking. Meghan wasn't a passive participant in social circles. She was the organizer, the one who ensured things happened according to her plan. For Trevor, this moment was likely the beginning of a realization. He wasn't just marrying an actress with ambition, he was with someone who understood how to manage perception, how to direct the experience of everyone around her. And that ability, to build the mood, to steer the story, would become a defining part of her rise. The Jamaica wedding story has since resurfaced countless times online, not because of what it says about that single day, but because of how it foreshadows the chapters that followed. It showed a Meghan who thrived when she could set the scene. And when you follow that thread forward, it leads directly to Toronto in 2016. The night critics say almost exposed everything. By 2016, Meghan was established in Toronto filming Suits, balancing her life as a rising actress with growing influence in private social circles. At the same time, Prince Harry was beginning to visit her in secret, slipping away from palace handlers for weekends in Canada. To the public, it looked like the early stages of a modern fairy tale. But behind the scenes, insiders say a single night nearly ended the story before it began. According to those close to the scene, Meghan wasn't just entertaining Harry quietly. She was orchestrating what Toronto's nightlife insiders called a run, a night where connections, discretion, and indulgence collided. In plain terms, this wasn't just about romance. It was about Meghan showing she could create a space where Harry could step away from palace rules and feel untouchable. What turned whispers into lasting controversy was the name tied to that night, Princess Eugenie. No evidence has ever proven she was directly involved, but even having her name linked to the event was enough to spark alarm. For Harry, whose reputation was already shaky after the infamous Vegas photos, one leaked headline could have been catastrophic. For Meghan, still building her image, exposure at that moment could have shut down her royal ambitions entirely. Critics argue something went wrong that night, just enough to create a close call. And then, suddenly, silence. No paparazzi shots, no tabloid exclusives, no trace in official records. For an institution where every move of Harry's life had been documented, that absence looked almost impossible to explain. Supporters say it proves nothing ever happened. Detractors argue it proves the opposite, that someone powerful stepped in to make sure nothing ever surfaced. That's why the Toronto night has never faded. Because for critics, it wasn't just a scandal narrowly avoided. It was the moment Meghan's long game almost slipped into the open. The strangest part of the Toronto story isn't the whispers, it's what never appeared. Paparazzi had tracked Harry for years, catching even the smallest slip. Yet this night in Toronto, when he was at his most vulnerable, produced nothing. No blurry photos, no grainy tabloid scoops, not even a vague report. That silence became the story. Analysts pointed out that the only way such a night could vanish was if powerful strings were pulled. Palace aides, already on edge after Harry's past scandals, would have seen any risk involving Eugenie as explosive. Others argue Meghan's Soho House network, influential and protective, may have played a role in keeping the night invisible. The contrast is striking. Sarah Ferguson's photos in the 1990s? Headlines for weeks. Prince Andrew's connections years later? Impossible to contain. But in Meghan's case, not even a rumor made it to print at the time. Supporters say this proves there was nothing to see. Detractors insist the silence proves everything, that it was too dangerous to allow into the public record. And that's why this chapter won't die, because the absence of evidence has become its own evidence. A missing headline is easier to bury than a printed one, but it leaves a gap that critics will always try to fill. When whispers about Toronto resurface, they always circle back to Trevor Engelson. He isn't just Meghan's ex-husband. He's the one person who knew her before the reinventions. And according to those close to him, Trevor believed none of this happened by accident. Meghan's rise wasn't luck, it was preparation. The claim that's drawn the most attention is simple but explosive. Meghan always had her eye on royalty. The so-called vision board story, where Prince Harry's photo was allegedly pinned among her goals, has been repeated by commentators for years. Whether literal or symbolic, it reinforces the idea that Meghan's marriage into the monarchy wasn't fate, it was strategy. Seen through that lens, the Jamaica wedding anecdote looks different. Rolling joints for an entire guest list wasn't just playful. It showed her ability to curate, to direct, to control the environment. Toronto nights at Soho House weren't just social. They were training grounds for building influence. Every step, from Hollywood auditions to royal introductions, looks less like chance and more like checkpoints on a carefully mapped path. Trevor's silence in public, paired with whispers attributed to him through intermediaries, has only fueled the speculation. Meghan erased him from her story, but his perspective continues to reappear at key moments. And now, with Meghan and Harry's public image under more pressure than ever, Trevor's alleged claim that she planned it all from day one sits at the center of the debate. If Trevor's claim was that Meghan planned her path from the start, the way she lived in Toronto makes it easy to see how. Meghan wasn't juggling a simple schedule. She was managing two completely different identities at the same time. By day, she was Rachel Zane on Suits, the hardworking actress with the polished public image. She gave interviews about ambition, family values, and wanting to inspire young women. To her fans, she was a grounded Hollywood striver on the edge of a breakthrough. But by night, insiders say Meghan moved in an entirely different world. At Soho House, she wasn't just another guest. She was the connector, the person who knew who to call, who to invite, and how to keep reputations safe behind closed doors. In that circle, her value wasn't about being on screen. It was about access, control, and trust. This ability to live in parallel worlds is what critics say made the Toronto 2016 night so believable. Meghan could host Harry in a way that felt both thrilling and secure, giving him what palace life never could: freedom without exposure. And at the same time, she kept the public image spotless. No leaks, no slips, no trace. For supporters, this shows adaptability. For critics, it shows calculation. Either way, it was the skill that allowed Meghan to climb from actress to duchess without the worlds colliding. And it's exactly what makes Trevor's long game claim resonate, because only someone skilled at compartmentalization could keep that many versions of herself alive at once. For years, Meghan's public story looked seamless, but as scrutiny deepened, small inconsistencies started breaking through, and each one made Trevor Engelson's long game claim harder to dismiss. Take the interviews. In one, Meghan insisted she had never Googled Harry before meeting him. In another, she described his traits in precise detail that sounded less like chance and more like research. She said she felt isolated in the UK, yet flight records revealed frequent trips to Italy, Amsterdam, and New York. These weren't dramatic contradictions, but they chipped away at the polished version she presented. Then there were the palace edits. At first, Meghan's official biography described her as a double major at Northwestern, fluent in multiple languages, and decorated for humanitarian work. But quietly, those details disappeared. What remained was a single stripped-down line: Meghan Markle, actress from Suits. For a royal institution that prides itself on accuracy, the change was deliberate, not careless. Critics argued it was the palace's way of distancing itself from exaggerations that didn't hold up. Supporters say these are small oversights, blown out of proportion by detractors. But critics tie them back to the larger pattern: build, erase, rebuild. The very strategy Trevor suggested Meghan lived by. The story shifts, the details adapt, and the past is quietly buried. And when you line up those cracks, the edits, the contradictions, the missing friends from her early life, it's easy to see why Trevor's perspective continues to matter. Because for many, these gaps don't look random. They look like the evidence of a plan unfolding exactly as designed. In Hollywood, reinvention is normal. Stars change names, rewrite backstories, even reset entire careers without consequence. Meghan mastered that model, each chapter carefully replacing the one before. But the monarchy is different. It thrives on continuity, tradition, and memory. Every detail is archived, every inconsistency magnified. What worked in Los Angeles or Toronto suddenly became a liability inside Windsor Castle. That clash is why every contradiction, every quiet edit, every resurfaced rumor carries so much weight. In Hollywood, it would fade. In the monarchy, it becomes permanent record. Trevor Engelson's claim cuts through all the noise. Meghan didn't stumble into royalty. She mapped it. From the Jamaica wedding to Toronto nights, from palace edits to contradictions, each step looks less like coincidence and more like calculation. Supporters call it resilience. Critics call it strategy. But either way, the question lingers, was Meghan Markle's royal story fate, or was it planned from the very beginning?